In the meantime, let's go straight to Con Edison. We're expecting massive outages during and after the storm as well. Alfonso Quiroz joins us on the phone. Alfonso, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, tell us how the preparations went and what we're expecting as we go ahead.
Well, at the moment, we've got thousands of our employees that are going to be working overnight and throughout the day. We're moving equipment into place in advance so that our response will be as quick and efficient as possible. Once the storm hits, we look at all the damage, we make the area safe, and we try to make repairs as quickly as possible to get the customers back into service.
We're hearing that Lower Manhattan may be a particular problem because the power grid in that section could flood. So what is Con Ed doing to try to make sure that first of all, doesn't happen, and what if it were to happen?
Well, you have to remember that that if it does flood, it's going to be flooding with salt water and seawater,
right? And
that type of water can really damage a lot of our equipment in low-lying areas such as Lower Manhattan. And what we do what our plan is we've got people that are watching out. We've got what's called storm riders, and we're either have cameras there monitoring this equipment, or we have people there monitoring the equipment. And if the water level gets too high, then yes, we will shut that equipment down. The reason why we do that is that it's quicker to restore than to just let it continue out and burn out.
So there may be some power outages there that are actually, I don't want to say caused by Con Ed, but these may be intentional power outages in certain sections of Manhattan. Can you pinpoint them a little bit more for us?
Well, it all depends on where the water comes and how high it goes, and but it's sort of where Zone A is. Those are really the low-lying areas that we're going to be looking at: Lower Manhattan, other parts of Brooklyn and Queens, and what we just have to really watch very closely at those locations.
Right, especially you've got a lot of underground equipment in Lower Manhattan that's powering a lot of the city. Nick Gregory was saying earlier in Battery Park, if the water goes above 6.7 feet, that's when flooding begins, and it looks like that might actually be a possibility. At what point will you decide to preemptively cut power and de-energize that area to prevent further power loss?
Well, we have to wait to see what happens when the storm comes. We have to see what happens, how high the water gets. It really sort of that is part A of what is a bad situation for us, but also the overhead system in Staten Island and Westchester County. If the winds continue and the storm continues the way that we're seeing it, this could be a real problem with our overhead and underground system. What would happen is these winds would come and they'd knock trees onto overhead power lines and transformers, and that's where you're looking at real power outages in areas that have overhead lines.
Alfonso, you talked about the salt water. I mean, that certainly has a corrosive effect. So if that kind of damage is done, my suspicion is that this is not necessarily a repair, but more of a replacement, which could take a lot longer. Is that correct?
Well, we've been saying for a while now that outages from this will likely last a couple of days. This is certainly not going to be a quick fix. We're going to be monitoring everything really closely, and if there is an area or a piece of equipment that looks like it is flooding, we will shut that down. And it's certainly the last case scenario, but we're going to be monitoring it very closely.
And just give us an idea of what sections, and we're talking about Lower Manhattan here, but we're talking the financial district, or are we talking about the stock exchange? What are we talking about here?
That whole area has a chance to flood. The east side of Lower Manhattan, which is the Wall Street, the Seaport area, Battery Park City is also another area that looks like there may be flooding, along the coastline.
Sure.
Certainly, but that area in Lower Manhattan is very vulnerable.
And when you talk about the financial district here, I mean, this could have some really serious impact over the next several days. I mean, impact actually that's probably unprecedented, potentially.
That's exactly right. I mean, we not only are going to be looking at it very carefully, but we've called in for extra reinforcements. We've called in 700 external contractors, mutual aid crews. All of our employees here at Con Edison are working around the clock at this point. We're monitoring the storm very closely. We're going to be watching those areas in the low-lying areas, and we'll be making the decisions in the next day or two.
And I don't want to get out of your area of expertise necessarily here, but I mean, when you're talking about Con Ed, you're talking about wires, you're talking about fiber optics, you're talking about all kinds of communication channels as well, not just power. So potentially there could be some impact on those channels as well. Is that correct?
and Con Edison handles electric, steam, and gas, but there are a lot of different utilities under the ground.
Right, so a lot of utilities could be affected because of the power outages as well.
Absolutely.
All right, another concern that was voiced about Con Edison was the steam pipes and the steam systems. What's the concern there?
Well, a lot of people don't realize this, but there is steam under the ground in Manhattan. It goes from about 90th Street all the way down to the Battery, and steam is used, it's a very clean, green energy. It's used, the Empire State Building is a huge steam customer for us, and steam is used not only for heat, but also for air conditioning, running your elevators and things like that. And when if steam pipes are inundated with on the outside with water, the difference in temperature really makes them a dangerous situation to keep running. So what we do is that we prematurely shut them down so that there's not a dangerous situation.
And once again, you're going to be monitoring this as the storm progresses. But I mean, is there much of a warning when you have to do this kind of a shutdown, or is it just sometimes just spontaneously happen?
Well, we want to make sure that, number one, the situation is safe. So if we feel that it's going to be a dangerous situation, we're definitely going to make it safe. But really, for the advice that I would have for New Yorkers right now is just very, very simple advice. For folks that are in Staten Island and Westchester County and other areas that have the overhead wires, the big thing is downed wires. That's really a big issue with us right now. We don't want people to assume that they are de-energized just because a wire has been down on the ground. You always want to assume that they're live, which means that you don't touch them or try to go near them to move them with your hands or any other kind of object.
You know, a lot of people, I'm glad you're talking about safety, we're out in droves buying generators as well. Can you tell us about the dangers of generators and a bit of tips about how to use them safely, such as not to use them in garages or anywhere indoors?
Yeah, I'm definitely not an expert in safety with generators, but you know, you want to follow the advice that's on. It comes with the generators. There's plenty of advice on the mayor's website and on OEM, Office of Emergency Management, about what to do, tips of what not to do. A very simple tip is that if your power goes out, don't light a candle. You're going to make a situation, you could make a situation very deadly. Go out, make sure that you